In this interview series we call The Circuit, TechPoint serves up the human stories behind the major tech headlines in Indiana. I am your host, Roger Schumann, Senior Relationship Manager at TechPoint. Today we talk to Kristen Nunery, founder and CEO at myCOI. myCOI provides companies the ability to automate insurance certificate requests and compliance. In this episode, we talk to Kristen about her inspiration for founding the company, how they have built an award-winning employee culture, and what's on the horizon for myCOI. Hello, Kristen.
Hey, Roger. How are you?
Good. Great to have you here.
You.
Definitely want to jump into your company and talk about it a little bit. First off, for those not familiar with your company's name, it's pronounced myCOI and not myCOI. You're not involved with big fancy goldfish, correct?
I love it. Yep, you're correct. No myCOI.
Yeah. So so for those not to know, what's the COI stand for?
Yeah, Certificate of Insurance.
Yep. So can you describe then myCOI at a high level? I mean, you better be able to, I guess, right? But will you describe myCOI at a high level, what the company does and what customers you serve?
Yeah, you bet. So businesses hire us to make sure that any other business they hire, whether that's a vendor or a supplier or a contractor or maybe it's a tenant they're signing a lease with, we make sure that all those third parties have the insurance that they're supposed to have so that when a rainy day happens and things go wrong, our customers are protected and all those third parties are protected from what could be a very disruptive scenario.
Okay. So take me back to 2009. What was the process for certificates of insurance before myCOI came to market?
Yeah. So typical process would be that a company would do this all manually, all in-house, a ton of paper, a ton of emails, a ton of phone calls, because literally they hire, as an example, a general contractor hires a subcontractor, and they're asking for that piece of paper. They're checking to see if it meets the requirements. Usually doesn't. So they're like on the phone, they're writing emails,
right.
They're chasing it down, doing it all over again when that policy expires. And so it's just this headache, manual, labor intensive process.
So were there specific verticals that myCOI targeted initially, and how has your audience expanded in the last 14 years?
Yeah, we've always been sort of vertical agnostic, but we really got off the ground with construction and real estate. Those were two verticals that are very complex from an insurance perspective and high quantity with how many certificates of insurance they need to be managing on an annual basis. And that kind of fit our sweet spot, being able to handle those complex areas. So we really established ourselves very well in those two industries. But actually, we have customers in just about every major industry out there. So, manufacturing, government, franchise, energy, you name it. And we can support customers there.
So you've talked previously that your inspiration for founding myCOI was driven by an experience that you had in high school. Can you talk a little bit about that event and how the idea for the company evolved from that?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was a junior in high school and our house burned down. It was October. I will never, ever forget it. But it was basically a total loss. So it was buy toiletries, buy clothes, find a place to live. I was actually the only family member in town when that happened. So watched it burn that night, had to, communicate with the family around that. And, ultimately the type of insurance policy my parents had, turned into a 3-year battle with the insurance carrier before the claim was paid out. And it really did not need to be that way. But they just were in that situation where they didn't know what they didn't know. And the policy their broker had them with really did not set them up well to handle this situation. So we went through a lot of challenges during that window of time and just kind of lived through, some tough chapters. So what we do today is, our purpose is to protect people from living through the disruption that I personally lived through, right? And we just do it and we apply it in the business world. So our goal is to make sure that the people that work for our customers and all those third parties, which oftentimes are small businesses, that they are protected. They work hard every single day doing what they do and what their purpose is. And our goal is to make sure that when an accident happens, that's part of life. Accidents are going to happen. But it doesn't cause that level of disruption. And really, even some of the small businesses that we, track those third parties, they could go under without the right insurance. And so it's a really meaningful thing that our entire team has rallied behind. It's really, truly the purpose of our business and how we make our decisions, why we do what we do every day.
So I've heard that myCOI wasn't your first attempt at entrepreneurship. So in college, you had a stock photography agency, and then after graduation, you flipped houses for a living. What are some of the lessons learned from each of these experiences, and how have they contributed to the success of myCOI?
Yeah, I'm definitely an entrepreneur at heart. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur from a pretty young age. And so that first one, the stock photography agency, I think with that business, I got into that. Photography is a passion of mine, and I got into that because it was really something I enjoyed doing, the passion behind it. I love the entrepreneurship part of it, some of the excitement that comes with that, the challenges that come with that, creating something new. I desired the lifestyle I felt like it could deliver, but I missed one really important lesson in that business. And, it's really truly understanding where the industry is in its maturity and where the competition is and what it looks like, what market opportunity really exists. That was an industry that really was very saturated already, and primarily through two very large corporations. So trying to have a startup in more of a niche area, had its challenges for sure. And so I think just being wiser around evaluating, where to spend time and energy and really understanding where the market is, where competition is, and how much that should influence or impact how to approach the business and whether or not to even go about starting a business in that area. And then I would say, from the real estate perspective, I loved what I did there, flipping houses and had rentals, and really enjoyed that. And the whole reason why I ended up exiting that was when the housing industry crashed in 2008. And I look back on that today and I think about how so many businesses really succeed by how they approach the challenging times and the tough times, right? The ones that figure out how can you lean in when everybody else is kind of going into hibernation mode, protection mode, kind of getting cautious. How can you really take advantage in those scenarios? So I think back to that now, and the investors that decisions people made in that window of time when the housing economy was going south, there really was a lot of opportunity that exists within that. So I think that's definitely a lesson learned that I've taken with me into this business. And, anytime we're faced with friction or challenging times, really trying to think about, how can you lean in? How can you really take advantage of this time and double down?
Yeah. So, when you were flipping houses, was there an obvious connection to construction in myCOI at that time? Had you made that connection yet, or did that come further down the road?
I understood it because I was just hiring contractors to help flip the houses. It was on a much smaller scale, what I was doing compared to what our customers and the size customers we have today and what they do. But I definitely understood it. And that was a factor in wanting to be able to start this business and recognizing what the need was.
Yep. So the past few years have been a series of headlines from myCOI. You've secured funding. You were named among IBJ's 40 Under 40. Congratulations. You received awards for being a top employer from Powder Keg, Indy Star, and Checkpoint at the Mirror Awards. What do you attribute all of the recent growth and success to?
Yeah, I'm very grateful for all of those items. When I reflect on kind of the combination of them, I'm a huge believer that businesses are successful because of the people within them. No business achieves what they want to achieve or is able to have the success they want to have or the culture they want to have, deliver to customers the way they want to without having the people within that team really being able to drive that. So I guess when I look back at, being able to have the different honors that we've had and to be able to have some of the successes we've had, I think so much of that is our team and how we've built our team and how we approach hiring, how we approach leading the team, how we approach our culture, and really also within that, having a team that's very connected to our purpose and being very much a purpose-driven company.
What is it about myCOI's culture then that has led to all these awards as an employer? Is it leadership training, commitment to diversity, 4-day work week? You might even want to talk about that. But what do you hear from your employees that seems to be resonating?
Yeah. I think probably the number one thing is listening intently. We have a theme within the company of listen and deliver. And we do that intentionally with our customers, of being able to really listen with intent and understanding them to be able to deliver. But we are just as committed to doing that internally and with our own team. And so I think many of the decisions we've made and how we've gone about building the team and the culture is what it is today because we really genuinely listen to the team and what their desires are, what their needs are, and put very intentional effort on a day-to-day basis to deliver back on whatever those needs may be. So, all the different things we've chosen to do along the way have, in some form or fashion, come from what we've heard from the team. And so all the things that you mentioned are all things that we've done because of that. So sending our leaders through, we did a year-long leadership training course. It was phenomenal. We made the decision to go to a 4-day work week, but that actually, we did that as a test run at first. And it was right at the beginning of COVID, and we were hearing that our team was really struggling with rest. And a big part of that we felt like it was hard for people to have the wall between work and home life when they were working from home for the first time. And it all just sort of blended together. And so it was hard to kind of have the space for both and for people to be able to figure out how to go about that when we were kind of early on in the work from home days. So we ran it as a test case and said, let's go a month on a 4-day work week. Let's see how that supports the team, being able to really truly shut down and disconnect and have that extra Fridays is our day off. So have Fridays and the long weekend to be able to disconnect and see how that influences the teams. We use an engagement survey, and so how rest would show up on that survey. And it worked. So we continued it and eventually made it permanent. But all of those things, I guess I come back to, it was, our very intentional effort to listen to our team.
I mean, I know I can definitely, I think most of us who've had any experience working from home the last few years certainly get that. There's, it's like, when do you stop working? When you're working in an office, usually it's when you get in the car and you go home. But if you're sitting at home, like I could be working.
Oh my gosh.
My computer's right in front of me.
Yep.
So certainly understand. Something that I found to be a great example of myCOI's culture and you leading by example was in 2020. You actually spent a portion of the year working remotely from an RV, traveling across the country. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and the impact that and the effect that it had on your employees? And do you see anyone taking similar trips?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So first year of COVID, I spent 6 months on the road and leading this company while in the RV. And that happened. I was sitting at home early on, when COVID first started, and I was on Facebook and I saw a friend post, and she was on the road in an RV that her husband owned and that he would travel for his business with it. And I always, it was a bucket list item for me to do, live the RV life for a little while. And I just never imagined that being any time in the near future. And I was sitting there realizing, wait a second. If there's ever going to be a time I can do it, like sitting here at my dining room table and, it's just, I don't have kids. And so I didn't have that added element to it, and was like, why not? I'm going to go do this now. And at that point it was, we were all still talking about, will we be back in the office in 2 months? We don't know. And so literally that week I got on the road, in an RV. And so, I think that I had some fears in doing it. I had some concerns around just what would the perception be, and, what would our board's perception be of that, and investors' perception. And, but ultimately just decided to go ahead and do it. And it was an opportunity to lead by example, to help the team look for opportunities in the situation we were in, right? Like, kind of back to that, how can you double down or how can you lean in when you're faced with friction, right? And so this was a new scenario. Right. People were really struggling with how to handle it. There were a lot of emotional, mental challenges people were facing. And it just was this opportunity to say, hey, find something to focus in on, find the positive in this situation, and it's okay to go do it. And I think it really, I think it was a factor in kind of helping our team and our culture and our engagement during that time frame, because I think it just sort of gave permission for people to be able to do other things as well. And it was a very unique experience. I always call it my trip of extremes. I got to see some just beautiful places in the U.S.
Yeah, where all did you go, and I could just imagine what were some of the more interesting meetings that you had where you had a backdrop behind you that was not your normal dining room table?
Oh my gosh! So the first 3 months I spent all in the northwest quadrant of the country, and so I was in a lot of very remote mountain areas, and I was what's called boondocking, which basically means you're not hooked up to utilities or anything. You're just kind of out in the middle of national forest land. Right. And so, I had some of the most majestic places where I would be holding meetings and sitting outside on my camping chair with, mountains in the background. But I think my most interesting story of that was one day, I actually was at a campground this day. I went to Lake Tahoe, and there are not as many places to boondock there. And so I had a campground, and I was on a meeting. It was end of the day, last meeting of the day. So I went outside to sit down, outside instead of in the RV, and get the laptop up, get Zoom up and running. And all of a sudden I had 2 dogs, and they're both with me on this trip. And so they were outside on their leashes, and they just started barking like crazy. And I look up, and there is a bear in my campground, not the large campground, in my campsite. Right. And I threw my laptop up. So my teammates that were on that call will tell the story. They're seeing the trees above me and the dogs went crazy and hearing me wrestle around the background. Oh man. But got the dogs back in the RV. Bear ran away. That was probably the most entertaining one.
So considering the company culture experiments that you've been running, which has had the most unexpected or surprising outcome compared to what you thought or worried might happen before starting it?
Gosh, there's a couple of different things that come to mind on that. In the 4-day work week, I already mentioned that one, but that definitely stands out. Right? That's, almost seems like the opposite of what you would do to kind of reach the goals you wanted to as a company, right? Wanting a company that's really dedicated, engaged, and focused, and achieving, the goals that we wanted, the velocity we wanted, and to be able to say, hey, let's move to a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day to, get that sort of maximum achievement we wanted. a little surprising, right? But that was a suggestion around thinking about different ideas for rest, and experimented with it, and it worked out. Another one, though, is coming out of, I get all my years mixed up here, but when it was, people were starting to go back to the office, and a lot of companies were moving to a hybrid schedule of some sort. We had intended to do the same thing. In fact, we were about to have moved forward with that and sign on that. And we said, let's send a survey to the team just one more time on some of the different thoughts that we have on how we're going to do this and how we're going to structure it. And that survey became really clear that it was a really bad idea for us to go back to the office at all. And so it was that survey that changed our decision on it and let go of the office completely and decided to stay 100% remote company. So we really thought people were ready to get back, right? And so I guess that was also another scenario where we were surprised at what we got back from the team on that, but it changed our approach, and we're still 100% remote today.
Do you have any sage advice for other employers or entrepreneurs on this subject of, different things that you've tried and listening to your employees? And I mean, to some degree, you probably have to make decisions that are the best decisions for the company that may not be popular, but it sounds like you're really listening to what's working best for your employees.
Yeah. I guess I would say, listen intently and don't be afraid to experiment. I feel like a lot of conversations I have with other entrepreneurs or business owners or leaders in general, I feel like sometimes you sort of get stuck in a decision where we feel like it needs to be something permanent, and not really thinking about options for how we can make decisions that allow us to experiment or adapt as we learn more and as things adjust and as things change. So I guess that would be my encouragement is, don't be afraid to experiment. Think about how you can make decisions for the company and for the team that can be something that allows you to start small and see how it goes, and then know what to implement from there. So that we're really always, we're never going to get it right all the time, right? We gotta learn as we go. And so being able to really experiment allows us to figure out what's going to be best.
Yeah. So TechPoint, we are focused on the tech ecosystem in the state of Indiana. So this is kind of an Indiana podcast. What effect or how important is place? So being in Indiana to myCOI, and how has it impacted your business?
Yeah. So we have really enjoyed being in Indiana. I think for us, we've had a tremendous amount of support from the community in general and some of the larger stakeholders within that community. I'd put TechPoint, definitely one of those. Elevate Ventures for sure, one of them. They're a fantastic investor of ours and have supported us all along the way. But I just think that, Indiana, it really is a community of people that want to be able to help and support and want to be able to, lift up the people around them and bring forward whatever they can. And so I think if we are willing to seek that out and willing to be a part of that, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Indiana to really get support in growing a business or starting a business, and not just as the entrepreneur or for growing the business, but for other leaders, other teams. There's just a lot of different things out there for support within different functions of the business, and a lot of opportunity for networking as well, and opportunity for doors to be opened. And I'd also say just cost of living here, being where it is really beneficial. And there's a lot of investors from all over the country that, of course, intentionally look for businesses here and look for opportunities here. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to take advantage of. So I'm a fan. I enjoy having a business here. I think the level of support's been incredible, and very grateful for that.
So since you founded myCOI, you've grown now to more than 100 employees, and you're across, I think, over 13 states now. And but during the 2022 Mirror Awards season, you indicated that you were pretty bullish on myCOI's growth. What's your vision for the future of myCOI?
Yeah, I am very bullish on it. It kind of comes back to that lesson learned in stock photography. The industry we are in right now is at a place where the adoption of what we do is really gaining a lot of momentum, and there's a tremendous amount of market share opportunity for us to deliver what we do and kind of live out our purpose. And so we really feel like the timing is fantastic for us right now, and very excited for the next few years. There's also just within the insurance industry, there's a lot of movement towards innovation and towards technology, and that in itself opens up a lot of opportunities for us as well to deliver a solution to our customers that really couldn't have been done 10 years ago. And that's really exciting for us. So we sort of look at this intersection of timing with the market, our purpose and our strategy of how we're going about it, where the industry is going as a whole. And, for us, it is, we want to stay very dedicated and focused on the one thing that we do, and just be the absolute best at that so that we are the market leader we are today. We continue, expect to be that as we continue forward, and excited for the opportunity that exists. So we just want to continue to grow doing what we do, and really want to help support and protect people from back to living through what I lived through. We don't want them to go through it. And so we're here to do that, and excited for the future.
Kristen, thanks so much for spending some time with us today, and we continue to look forward to that growth that you expect, and we just want to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you for having me, Roger. Enjoy being on the show.